panel. I know that we're going to have an incredible conversation today, so we're going to give everyone a few minutes just to join in. But if you are joining and you happen to not know what we're doing today, we are talking about the rise of gamification and the return of creative. And we have some of the most incredible brands that really focus in on this effort, but more so than the brands are the minds behind it, because really it's all about the teams. So we've got an insane panel here today. I'm really excited because I have so many personal questions about this, because gamification has really influenced all of our lives. I don't know about you guys, but even my water bottle is gamified at this point. So we're gonna have a really great conversation. And as you're joining in, I'm just gonna introduce myself as well as the rest of the panel, and then we will get into it. So I'm Laurel Mintz. I am the CEO and founder of Elevate My Brand. We are a digital and experiential marketing agency located in lovely Los Angeles, California. And we work with brands much like those on the panel today, large tech SaaS brands from Facebook and Verizon to middle market CPG. So I am like really hungry about this conversation. I'm so excited. And with that, I'm going to pass it to the panelists to give their quick and dirty introductions, because we want to make sure that most of our time is spent answering your questions. And before I do that, please make sure we have the QA box open. I've got my chat open. My favorite part of these conversations are the questions that you have. This is about you and the questions you have for some of these brands, which are the biggest brands in the world. So please give us your questions. I'll make sure that they're answered because this is all about you guys. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Quentin to give us a little introduction on Gameloft and his personal story as well.
Sure. Thank you very much, Laurel. Well, hi, everyone. So my name is Quentin. I'm head of creative strategy for North America at Gameloft. If you haven't heard about us, we're one of the oldest mobile gaming publishers around. We're celebrating our 20th anniversary this year. We're also part of the Vivendi Media conglomerate, alongside companies such as Universal Music, Hava, Studio Canal, or Dailymotion. We have an international presence. On my side, I spent about 9 years in our Saigon studio in Vietnam, before relocating 2 years ago in Toronto, where I'm creating games for brands.
Amazing. And with that, I'm going to pass it to Ryan with Uber.
Hi, everyone. First of all, I just want to thank you for giving your time today and being a part of this super interesting conversation. Yep, I'm Ryan. I've been at Uber for the past 5 years or so. As of last week, that actually changed. I'm going on to a new, bigger and exciting opportunity. So yeah, I'm looking forward to getting stuck into this today. I've been fortunate enough to travel the world throughout my career, which has taken me to APAC, EMEA, LATAM, and now US and Canada. So looking forward to getting stuck into this conversation.
Such a tease, Ryan. I know that you're going to share with us where you're going eventually, but not on today's chat. So you'll have to stay tuned to learn about that. Passing it along to Morgan with HP.
Yeah, Morgan Shimmy. I oversee acquisition and retention marketing for the HP store in the US, and then I oversee global UX as well. Been here for about 5 years, so I'm really interested in evolution, and great to be on the side of the house where we're building the product and marketing the product. Gives us some really unique perspective into consumer personas and how we develop products based on kind of the evolving customer needs, particularly what we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months since COVID. So excited to talk more about it.
Definitely. And we're going to get into that topic for sure. And last but certainly not least, Jim with Under Armour.
Hi, everybody. Jim Malika, Senior Vice President of Consumer Engagement. So basically what that means is I'm responsible for creating engaging consumer experiences, both in our own branded environments and in the wild. During my time at Under Armour, I've covered everything from communication strategy to creative and programming, distribution, CRM, and the e-commerce experience. And with this topic in particular, I also had spent some time at Viacom and the Kids and Family Nickelodeon empire, as well as Disney. So a long track record of using games to engage, entertain, inform, and ultimately convert.
Amazing. I mean, this is like the juiciest panel I've had. I mean, and Reuters gets the most incredible panels to begin with, but you guys really are the top of the food chain as it relates to gamification. So let's get into it. I do want to mention, it looks like the chat is disabled. So if you could ask your questions in the Q&A box, we'll make sure that we get to them there, unless Paul, that can be enabled at some point. But please ask the questions, because again, this is about you guys, not about us. So with that, we've also always got to start at the beginning. So Quentin, can you just give us like a little bit of background? When did gamification become such a big conversation? Because Gameloft, I mean, this is foundational to your business. And then it kind of spread out from there. So can you share with us a little bit about kind of the story of the start of gamification?
Sure. So it's quite funny because we think that gamification, you know, is quite recent, and actually the term itself is actually not so old. But advertising and gaming have actually been tied together for quite a while. I mean, the first advert games appeared, you know, on the Atari 2600. So I'm speaking, you know, the 70s and the 80s. You had brands like McDonald's or Coca-Cola, so mostly endemic brands that actually tried to reach out to a younger audience through video games. And after that, you had brands like sports brands, you know, like Adidas, that were actually, you know, having the logos appearing in games like FIFA. So advertising and gaming have always, you know, been tied together. As far as gamification goes, it really started growing, I think, in the early 2000s, when were really like where gaming really started to become more and more a pop culture, more and more mainstream, and where companies were actually starting to get interested into the field, because they could see a potential to engage and interact with their customers in a new and engaging way, and for the employees also to train their employees, you know, in a more effective way. So it's been gone. You know, it started actually very early on in the 80s, and right now it's really like exploding, especially, you know, with the COVID crisis.
Yes, absolutely. You talked about engagement, and Jim, I know that's your main focus, or one of your main focuses is engagement, and specifically as it relates to the Under Armour brand as well. Do you guys focus on engagement on the customer side? Because Quentin was also talking about engagement within the structure of the company as well. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, look, I think, you know, the interesting thing with gamification is that at the end, it's a powerful psychological tool that is sort of a proven reward system that changes human behavior. So, you know, we use it, and we have used it to connect to the youth through integration. Quentin was talking about Adidas, you know, with their logo into FIFA. You know, what we try to do is take it a step further, where we've integrated into 2K with the Curry brand, where you're actually able to unlock Curry shoes, Curry gear for your players in their neighborhood function, in the playground function, that just adds value to the consumers. And part of that, you know, part of that expression, just by being there and adding value to their lives, is really powerful communication tool that we get it, and where, you know, this product is built for them by people like them. But we also take that all the way to the other side of Under Armour, where, you know, products like MyFitnessPal, the you know, health and fitness app, where we're using gamification techniques to, you know, help people get from who they are today and cross that chasm to who they want to be tomorrow. Is a very, very different demographic. So, you know, I think the tools are tried and true. It's just how you're applying them and in what environment.
Absolutely. I know, Ryan, you have the sentiment that brands aren't taking gamification seriously enough right now. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think it's a super interesting question, and it's something that I continue to ask my team over the last couple of years.
Oh, we lost your audio. Can you guys hear? Nope, we lost your audio. Yep, it's okay. I will pass the question along.
Can I add to that for a second while we get Ryan's audio back?
Absolutely.
I think one of the, and as soon as he comes back, I can't wait to hear his response. I'll tell you one of the things that I think is that
Please.
Because the people that are making the decisions and holding the budget don't understand gaming, have a view of it that it's only for young people, or it's, you know, the adolescent that doesn't want to go to school, that's eating bags of Doritos and drinking Coke in the basement, and not understanding it's an incredibly powerful communications weapon against all audiences. And so there's this, predisposed notion and lack of involvement in that medium, which I think is a real impediment. At least it has been for us as we've been moving forward, but hopefully we have Ryan's audio back.
Yes, Ryan, how are we doing? We back with you?
Is that better?
We're back. Yes.
Sorry,
Okay.
sorry.
So we were talking about why you think brands aren't taking it seriously, and then Morgan, I know that segmentation is a big conversation around this, and I think that Jim's point is going to be well answered by your perspective on that. But Ryan, please tell us, how can brands use this more effectively, and why do you think that they aren't taking it as seriously, aside from Jim's point?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and it's something that I've definitely experienced during my time at Uber. A year or so ago, we had a high-profile partnership with Ninja, and when we first presented that idea about, okay, Ninja, he's really kind of breaking the internet right now. Senior leadership, the first thing they thought of is like, gaming? Are you serious? This is just for kids. And I think that's one of the biggest problems, that there's this expectation that you're only targeting this small audience. And I think Jim briefly touched on it. It's much greater than that. It's much more diverse, and especially in the world that we live in right now, it's a huge opportunity, and something that I take extremely serious within my org. And the way we really got that across the line is to just show the numbers and the data. I think at one point, I believe Ninja was the most followed sports person across all social networks, which is incredible when you compare that to the likes of Ronaldo or Messi. I know Ronaldo's overtaken him recently, but it's huge. So for me, it's really backing everything up with data, presenting that to senior leadership, and then those numbers speak for themselves.
I couldn't agree more. And HP's been really great about building data into that conversation, and specifically segmenting audiences so that you can showcase the value of a relationship like a Ninja. Morgan, can you speak to the segmentation and the data points that HP brings to the party?
Yeah, and I think it almost ties back to what Jim had just highlighted. And it's interesting, like how we look at it now versus how we would have looked at it a year ago. I think, at some point in time, a lot of the gaming was on consoles, and then we started to see PC gaming having a resurgence. And what we've seen over the last 6 to 9 months are a lot of those like myself who are a little bit older and grew up playing on consoles and walked away from it. Now we spend all day on a PC, and we're a lot more comfortable on a PC. And so gaming on a PC is seeing a resurgence with people who might be, I don't eat as much chips and drink as many Slurpees as I used to, Jim. But, and even if you look at the PS5 over my shoulder, there's just been this resurgence. And when you think about the segmentation, what we're able to really do, I mean, you look at the Omen PCs that we sell that are designed specifically for gaming. They've got Omen Command Center, and the amount of data that we're getting back and forth from users, and just insofar as improving our own product, understanding when people are playing, how many different people within a family are playing, et cetera, et cetera. We do get this really interesting insight into, is the parent sharing the game with the child? Are they playing on 2 different HP PCs at the same time in the same game? And what we're starting to see is that like there's definitely more family gaming that's happening as a result of you're spending all this time with your children now, and like what's that common voice? How do you have common dialogue? And gaming is one way of many that you can have that common dialogue. And the other thing that we're starting to see is this overall bifurcation. You've got this gaming segment that's probably in like the 13 to 18 range. And then you've kind of got this like, which is obviously like the kids that are crushing it and making millions of dollars gaming. And whoever thought you could make money playing video games, if my parents knew back then. But you've got this unique segment that kind of sits in that envelope. And then you've kind of got this like 18 to about 25 segment. And so, you've got people who are in school, and, now there's esports classes and universities, et cetera, and, an entire curriculum kind of around not just playing, but video game design, et cetera, at major universities. And then you have these people who are entering the workforce, and like they're using Uber, they're going out on dates even during COVID, and they're still carving out hours a day to game. And then you've got your professionals who have families and are still finding this time to game, whether it's by themselves, whether it's with their children, et cetera. So what we're starting to see is this stratification that kind of falls into kind of four kind of really, I'd say, unique buckets. And then the other thing is the rise of the female gamer. And I think for a long time, there'd kind of been this there you go. I think there had kind of been this mentality that gaming was a thing that guys do. And it's not just a thing that guys do. And if you look at some of the top players in the industry right now, a lot of them are female. And I think, brands getting their head around that, just holistically, how much gaming has changed, not just over the last 4 or 5 years, but even over the last year. And figuring out, what the right strategy is to engage, whether it's console or PC based, is really going to be, if we're in this COVID situation for another 9 months or a year, like there should still be a very medium to long-term strategy. Not only how do they navigate over the next year, but then beyond that, and how are they leveraging gamification, and the different opportunities it presents.
100%. Well, first of all, I want to say the branding moment that you have behind you, I love that from a marketing perspective. I thought that was really choice.
I should have an omen box behind me, but
I know
I didn't have
totally
one in the
should.
garage, unfortunately.
So Quentin, Morgan spoke to how the demographics and psychographics are really shifting. I'd love to hear your perspective on that. And then we've got some major questions coming in from the audience that I want to shift to as well.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think really like there's a major shift, and I think brands are also like starting to understand the power of gaming and gamification and what they can use it for. So yeah, Morgan mentioned about the rise of female gamers, and just to give you this number is that 46% of gamers are actually female today, and
Wow.
it's not, and it can be 46%. Sometimes you will see some studies when it's close to the 50%, but basically half of gamers are actually female. So it's really it's a really strong number. And when you look also at the average age of a gamer, we're talking about 34 years old. So it's not teens, it's not kids. It's really getting higher. So I think it's time. I think like with COVID, we know that gaming was a growing business, and there's been definitely an acceleration in terms of monetization of engagement, for gaming. And I think really brands are starting to see the potential of this medium, and that they can do plenty of things and touch a variety of audiences.
Yeah, at the end of the day, the monetization piece is huge. And I think to Jim's point earlier, that's what you have to go to the higher ups. That's how you make it make sense to them. So I love that is the perspective. Jim, did you want to jump in?
Yeah, Laura, just wanted to build on Quentin's point, and I think Morgan hit on it a little bit as well. I think the difference and the reason why it has changed in demographics is that it's not gaming anymore. It's inserting yourself or immersing yourself in a story arc. Right? That is becoming an absolute substitution for other narratives that you used to consume in the past. And I can say that with some certainty, having worked at Disney and Viacom, that we saw the shift from passively consuming content in linear or on demand or even movies to gaming, and not just console or PC, but the rise of mobile games. And that narrative from all of those demographics, from young kids all the way through to an older demographic, an older female demographic, where some of the biggest money-making mobile games, that's where what they used to refer to as whales, were in the industry. So I think that started to change the programming mindset around not just how brands look at it, but how entertainment looks at it.
100%. I have to admit, I just downloaded the Mario Brothers, and I started playing that again. It's like kind of been a throwback. So I guess I'm in that new demographic. I'm pretty excited about it. Okay, so we've got some great questions coming in from the audience. And I'm going to start at the beginning, actually. What is gamification in one sentence? I think some people are looking for kind of like a truncated way to just say, this is what it is. And I'm going to open up to anyone who'd like to answer. We'll do kind of like round robin on these.
So if I may for this one, so gamification is the application of game design principles to non-gaming activities. So if I give you concrete examples of what gamification components are, we're talking about leaderboards. We're talking about badges and rewards. We're talking about level up and experience points. So these are usually, I would say, the basics for gamification. But it actually goes beyond that because you also have now, the organization of events and challenges within the game. You have avatar customizations, etc., etc. So in one sentence, that's what gamification is about.
I think that was 5 sentences, but I'll let it pass. Okay. Anyone else care to venture a guess on 1 sentence gamification definition? Crickets. Moving on. All right. So we have some really interesting questions. This one, I don't know. This is an interesting one. Games, advertising, and psych and tech are increasingly controversial right now. How do we use gamification while not being evil? I think this is a really interesting, weird question. I think that the point of this question is really about collection of data and how companies are using it. I don't know if I match the two together, but Jim, go right ahead. I'd love to hear your perspective on this.
I mean, look, I've used, depending upon the audience, like we were the first brand to create games within advertising placements, within things like whether it's Instagram or Snap. And for me, I think it's the antithesis of being evil because you're putting the person in control, right? They're deciding if they're going to engage, we're rewarding them for certain behaviors. You give them complete recognition of understanding their progress, right? To Quentin's points about, badging and experience points. You're recognizing those rewards overtly, so it's not like it's hidden. So for me, I don't know that that any of that would be considered evil. What could be considered, maybe not the best practice is if you're taking that data that's coming out of there and using it in ways that you're funneling that to, not above board advertisers that have ill intent. But that's the same with any behavior. That's not unique to gaming.
100%. I think that perspective is a bit antiquated. And what you're saying is that it's really putting the user in the driver's seat, which I totally agree with. Morgan?
I think there's a couple different axes to this also. I mean, I think you've got very, very light gamification. So like when you get an email from a brand and they've got a save, it could be an airline, it could be, somebody like HP, and it's like save between 5 and 50%, scratch off to find out. And you can actively scratch on your mobile device to see what your discount is. Like that's a great example of gamification, and there's not really any data that's being given away, but it's engaging. It's a lot more fun than just opening an email and getting 10% off. I mean, even if you're going to get that 10% anyway, it's still like just that motion. I think the other piece of it is like, if you think about gamification within the user community and badging within a user community. So it could be something like, TripAdvisor, you contribute enough, you get a degree of leveling, you get that badge. With HP, we've got HP support, which is a significant, just given the size of how many PCs, et cetera, units we have in market. Being a brand advocate, these are people that take their time, roll up their sleeves and help other users out. And so, the value exchange insofar as badging or whatever the case may be. And so, I think could we go ahead and take people who are coming in, or could we more proactively market in the support side of the house? We could, but I think ultimately, it's really upon the brand to determine, what that line is and whether or not they want to cross it. And for different brands, they're going to have different perspectives based on where they are in their life cycle, what if they're trying to hit a specific KPI, et cetera, et cetera. But I mean, I do think that like on some level, consumers have to kind of be increasingly aware of, all this stuff that we got accustomed to having for free. It's not free. It doesn't matter if it's gamification or otherwise. Your Google Drive and that 20 gigs of storage in the cloud, that costs Google money. The cooling that Google has to use to keep that data center cool, that's a real electric bill that Google's paying every month. That's a real electric bill that AWS is dealing with every month. And so there is kind of this trade-off. And I think it's just something that consumers need to be increasingly aware of. And I think they are becoming increasingly aware of. And I think what's happening with obviously CCPA and some of the other pieces, brands are having to be more forward about what consumers are trading off for that relationship that they're going to build with a brand.
Agreed. Ryan, it looked like you wanted to jump in as well.
Yeah, and I totally echo what the guys just covered. And I think something else that runs through my mind whenever I venture into any kind of marketing is that, is this bringing value to the user? So it's looking at it in a very positive light, but it's also something else that we do. We get offered a number of different partnerships and we can work with all kinds of different brands. But my biggest alignment piece is, okay, do these brands align with our brand principles? Do they actually, is this someone that we're proud to work with? And I think that's something that we should always consider as well, because I don't want to work with someone that's posting negative promotions on social or performance or whatever it may be. So it's similar to how I approach any kind of marketing campaign, is looking at those base level principles.
Yeah, I think that the takeaway from this conversation, this question rather, is about values-based marketing. And really, I think the evil part is about privacy and transparency, which it sounds like all the brands here are really clear on, and that maybe that was a bit of an antiquated perspective on what gamification was, but is no longer, I think. So moving right along, thoughts on how to marry the get to the point, short attention span of website users spending time on the site, playing, learning more, and engaging via social and web platforms. So this is about attention span. How do we more engage users on platform? Quentin?
Well, that's the beauty of it, is that that's, you know, in a world where basically, you know, you see are bombarded with ads. With gaming and gamification, you manage to catch 100% focus of the players, because you're focused on playing, you're focused on getting the highest score, and that's what the beauty really of gaming. For instance, if we're taking, you know, the average time that people spend in our games, in Gameloft game, we're talking about 30 minutes a day or more. Even I think right now I think it's even 40 minutes, and it's a lot, you know, through different sessions. So I think 6 to 7 different sessions per day. So you can see that a good game will manage to retain attention, will manage to retain focus. And I think that's pretty much the, you know, it's intrinsic to any good game and to any video game and gamified experiences. It manages to keep you focused, to keep you engaged on the long run, and retain you, meaning like having you return on a regular basis to this experience, because it's fun to play, because you're having fun doing it.
Yeah, Jim, this like is literally your title. So I would
Yeah.
assume you have a lot to say about this.
Yeah, so this is a weapon that sometimes the CFO uses against you, right? Because I think the other side of the coin here is what conversion is it driving? And the point is that sometimes your tactics within, if you're planning this in a smart way, you're planning against an entire consumer journey, right? And some are designed to make you aware, some are designed to engage you and inform you. And then ultimately the other pieces are there for conversion. If this element, which typically it is there to engage you and help sway your perception of the brand. So for example, with the Steph Curry brand, when we launched, you know, one of the Curry sneakers, we hosted the World Championship of 2K from our headquarters in this massive video wall with some of the best players in the world. And we streamed it on Twitch. We did a partnership with Twitch. And it wasn't a lot of money, but the amount of scrutiny around that happened until we showed that we had something like 5 million streams that night.
Wow.
It's like, well, what would that have cost us? I'm like, yeah, well, how many sales do we get off of that? It's not the benchmark for that at that moment. At that moment, it was for us to get credibility to an audience where we know our segment is, that we're trying to get a tip of spear that is not using traditional media, right? And a way to influence them at that point. So I think that's the way you have to approach those arguments. It is part of your engagement tool where you are measuring how people are changing their brand perception based upon those environments.
Yeah, I think your point is that it's a different type of KPI. It's almost like PR, right? You're creating this really broad awareness tool that hopefully, if you're doing your job right, you're narrowing down into a conversion KPI that will eventually result in dollars, but that's not the top of the funnel. But I thought you guys crushed it with that campaign. All right, moving on. We've got so many questions. Thank you guys for being so engaging and engaged. This is an interesting one. I think maybe Morgan, this one's for you because it's a little bit focused on financial services, which is how can gamification be applied to any industry, specifically financial services? So how do we take the idea of gamification and narrow it into a not necessarily gamified industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Financial services is probably, aside from pharmaceuticals, one of the most heavily regulated, and has more government oversight than really anything else. And so I think it's somewhat challenging. I think what I see, I'm not going to name any specific brands, but what I see in the financial services space is, particularly for people who are maybe younger in their financial journey, as it were, like they're doing a really good job with gamification, like setting tiers, like when you save your first $1,000, you unlock a badge. When you save your first 5,000, they give you something back. The bank gives you, here's $50 in honor of this achievement, whatever the case may be. And so I think it is somewhat challenging insofar as what they can do, but I think really part of it is it's probably more like those people who are early in their financial careers, or in their financial journeys. For us, there's HP Financial Services, and that really assists people in financing their individual products. What I do see in this space, however, though, is when you look at companies like Affirm and some of these other companies that have really started in the last couple years, and just like in leaps and bounds of the microfinancing, you want to buy a $500 e-scooter and you can't really swing it. The amount of companies that have sprung up in the last couple of years to really facilitate that audience for these smaller kind of microtransactions, as it were. I think those are the ones that you really want to keep an eye on, because I think that's where a lot of your innovation is coming from. I think your bigger financial institutions like your Chase, et cetera, are trying to figure it out. But I think it's a lot of these, Series B kind of startups that are just really, they understand their customer, they understand the millennial audience. But unfortunately, I probably can't get too in depth, because it's not, unfortunately, a lot of what I focus on.
Yes, Quentin.
And if I may, in addition, I mean, also like when it comes to financial literacy for a younger audience, we know that when you start reaching, in your 20s, and you may want to burn all that money that you've just earned and you're so proud of earning. But it's gamification is also here to help plan on the long term. And we've seen already, I think it was Ally Banking in the US, who is having this sort of proactive financial literacy program that's gamified, and that's here to explain people in their 20s how to save for their retirement, how to save to buy a house for the mortgage system, etc. So it's also another aspect that is currently benefiting from gamification.
So interesting. And I didn't even think about that part of it. And Morgan, you brought up Affirm, and I have to say, I bought my Peloton because Affirm was like a no-brainer, 0% financing. I'm just going to spend $63 a month and I've got this $2,500 machine. It's amazing. So the next question is about local versus national advertising. I think, Ryan, this is an interesting question for you, because Uber's done a really good job of narrowing their focus to local markets and then expanding in a national capacity. So the question from Michael Myers is, can local brands advertise via gaming, or is it limited to national or online brands only? If I just want to target Houston or Dallas, is that possible? Also, who are the solution providers that can help with purchasing advertising? Well, that's a separate question. Let's answer the first one. Can local brands advertise via gaming, or is it limited to national online brands only?
Personally, I would say yes, but I would like to know what the other guys think about this as well. I think there is an opportunity to unlock campaigns at a local level. In terms of what we look at, we definitely look at scaling most of the time, just because of sheer efficiencies. We're looking to get to that profitability mark, which we'll get there one day. So yeah, it's all about scaling for us. But yeah, I would actually like to hear from the rest of the team in terms of how they think about local versus national or regional.
Yeah, I think, Jim, this is a good question for you, since Under Armour has such huge national reach.
Yeah, I think you can do it, right? Because there'll be excess inventory through traditional means that they'll run through programmatic or otherwise. I think how you measure its effectiveness, and to Ryan's point, is it cost effective for you? I think it's harder to do. It's harder to do, and definitely, you know, I don't think that there's the ability to, at least I haven't seen it seamlessly integrate into games at a local level. I think that's hard. I think you can buy into, you know, the ad networks to get you into a very targeted, precise, programmatic play. But I think if you're a smaller business, you're probably looking at more direct response, and that may be a tough play.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I think the programmatic approach is the one that makes the most sense, because that's the second part of the question is what solutions providers can help with purchasing advertising via this medium. You're talking to agencies that focus on programmatic at that point. So I think that that was well said. Quentin, you want to jump in?
Yeah, just one quick thing is that also, you know, people may think that in terms of investment, you know, like creating a game might actually, you know, be super expensive, and it's not the case. On our side, you know, we create games at a very you know, minimum affordable budget. Of course, if you want to be you know, if you want to be in a Call of Duty, in a NBA 2K, that might be more expensive. But just so you know, like if you want to create your own game that could be, you know, embedded on your website, or, you know, run on programmatic, that's something that's doable, and that's something that we do. We do national brands and more local brands. So yeah, so just it's pretty much for everyone can have it.
Love it. All right.
So
Next
yeah,
question.
just sorry, there was a question
go
just
ahead,
real
Morgan,
quick.
please.
I do think that, like, from a programmatic basis, you can get down, there is geo-targeting that exists within games. There's companies out there that enable this. There's a company called, somebody asked for specifics, there's a company called Frame Play, ping me, I can tell you guys all about them, that does this type of thing, and they work with like Unreal and Unity and a bunch of other game designers, and you can in real time get your messaging inserted into actual games. And it's funny, Quentin mentioned my building games. We live in Southern California, and I guess part of the curriculum is game design for third graders. And my kid pulled me into his room yesterday, and he was building his own Super Mario-esque game. And it was just really incredible that, like, you know, not only are there all sorts of ways for, you know, people like us to build games, but like they're making it so that, you know, 8 and 9-year-old kids can build their own games via drag and drop. So, you know,
Wow.
if an 8 or 9-year-old can do it, I feel like any marketer can build a game and add the appropriate level of branding. So
Yeah,
sorry.
that's amazing.
I just want to add one
Ryan, go
example
ahead.
actually that I just remembered. When I was working in Australia, there was this brand, and this is just like an alternative way to be hacky around gamification. And it was very much creating this kind of like treasure hunt. So first of all, it would start on social, and then it would go to the web, and then it would get back to the app. So you're giving the customer the full journey. But that's one way that if you don't have a huge amount of budget, you can get creative and just kind of like find other ways to unlock gamification.
100%. We've actually done that with some of our local partners. We have these like massive strip malls, and for Halloween, we did something very similar to that. So I totally agree. It can be executed on a local level with more limited budgets, but I think most of what you guys focus on, of course, is on a national scale. And we've got a question about globalization. And the question from Pedro Medina asks, if even though we all have access to all different kinds of games, they each usually have a target audience. Do you see branding, for example, Uber or Under Armour apparel, taking place in the future? Where do you see it taking place in the future in games? Does that make sense? So how are you expanding your audience into a more global market, I believe is the question. And this is for Uber and Under Armour specifically.
Well, I mean, for me, and there are natural audiences and different behaviors, right? Mobile gaming and getting it into the big platforms in China, for example, is a key strategy. Having those games being distributed by, you know, the KOLs out, you know, in China are incredibly important to us. I talked a little bit about, you know, the Curry experience, and we did, you know, something in real life. We keep talking about sort of the coding and the zeros and ones around games, but in real life, we created a scavenger hunt using Twitter and sent people all over cities. We did it in San Francisco and London, and I can't remember that. Maybe it was Tokyo, where there were hints, and people were drones would drop them in various areas. And so it's just a different experience in different environments for different people. You know, that Twitter focus was very focused on sort of the, you know, cultural tipping point of people that we wanted to experience the shoe early on, but all the way back into other experiences. I talked about MyFitnessPal, again, the largest health and fitness platform in the world. That's focused on, 35 to 55-year-olds that are, want to be in better shape, want to lose some weight. And it's a completely gamified. The entire thing is about consumer behavior change. So I just think it's the expression and how you apply it, not gamification for a younger audience.
Yeah.
I think it's also to remember, like, a lot of what we're talking about here isn't new. I mean, the example Jim drew, I remember we were living in New York in 2008 and JetBlue had this thing. It was probably for one of their anniversaries, and they were giving clues all around New York City, and you could show up there. And I think most of the clues they were giving were things that had blue to do with them, obviously. You could show up there and get a free round trip ticket anywhere JetBlue flew at that point in time. And it was just very, not to say anything ill of Twitter, but it was a very basic Twitter execution. They would give you a clue, and like you would think you'd figured it out and go and show up there, and inevitably there'd be other people who'd figured it out and you'd be waiting in the line. But like, I was fortunate enough to get my free JetBlue ticket. But like, a lot of what we're talking about here are these concepts or these approaches through these, whether it's a new channel or an old channel, they're not brand new concepts. You know what I mean? This idea of giving something away and getting people to, maybe delivering it by drone is new, which I love, by the way. But like, it's these concepts of getting people together in a single place, challenging with COVID, because you've got, something that you want to get out there and you want to create a buzz. It's been going on for, at least 100 years, right? Not longer than that. So I think a lot of this isn't about reinvention, right? It's about taking what do you know that works, and how do you just take it and apply it with new technology. So anyway, sorry, just to pile on.
Oh, I think that's a great response. And I love, Jim, we talked about zeros and ones. My husband's an engineer, and we were binary code for Halloween. So I thought you guys would just appreciate that we did all black and then zeros and ones across. It was hilarious. We have so many more questions. We're never going to get to answer all of these, but I'm just going to keep running through them as quickly as possible. Question from Satish says, when you say that 46% of gamers are females, and I think, Quentin, this is directed at you, does that hold true for Asian countries too, or is it more of a Western world number? What I mean to ask is, how does that number feature for a country like India, where we are just getting started with the explosion of mobile devices and reach of internet getting into the hands of the masses?
So for the 46% number is really across the board. So it's really a worldwide number across PC, console, and mobile. I don't have the figures specifically for India, but I know that even I lived in Southeast Asia for quite a while, and I know that even though it's still possibly a bit more male dominated, the rise of female gamer is there, and basically thanks to smartphone. I mean, definitely the games that female gamers play over there may not be the same as male gamers, but there's definitely also a rise there. So it's just at some point, I'm pretty sure it will keep on increasing. And again, the differences will be at the type of games that each type of player is playing.
I think that's totally fair. This question is for Ryan. What kinds of rewards are fun to gamify other than monetary compensation? How can I use gamification to motivate my employees and clients without just paying them more? I don't know why that was directed at you, Ryan, but I guess Uber's done a really good job of kind of taking it broader with Uber Eats, et cetera. Do you have a perspective on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really great question, and it's something that we've definitely been dabbling in for the last year or so. One way that we've rolled out kind of rewards is to also promote cross platform. So we look at like Uber and Uber Eats, and we see, okay, how can we bring value across both? Because a lot of the time, someone that orders food, for instance, they're not always going to take a ride, and vice versa. So we look to see how can we bring value across the board. And yeah, one thing that we do offer is like a free delivery if you're signed up to the reward scheme. But there is other ways as well, such as badges. And this is like, I know it feels very vanity, but people do love badges. They love to achieve these gold and these platinum badges. So that's kind of a potential way that we're looking at it. But yeah, a lot of the stuff that we offer is very kind of promotional driven.
Right. So continuing down the questions, as we have about 25 to answer before we wrap up in 15 minutes, and this time is just flying. This is more of a foundational question. With so many ways to add gamification, how do you start? How do you know what's going to work best? So I know you guys are kind of at the upper echelon of this question, but we all had to start somewhere. So what is the best starting point? Quentin, looks like you've got a perspective on that.
It really, I mean, it's just like, you know, we were basically on our side when we approach a gaming concept is the same as any advertising campaign. It starts with a brief. So it really depends on what type of objectives you want to reach. Is it to drive awareness, engagement? Is it really to drive conversion up? Is it to create a loyalty program and drive retention, etc., etc. So there's no like answer like from like a pre-made answer. It will really depend on what your objectives are. And I also want to add that we've been approached by brands in the past that want to get into the gaming space because they think it's cool. We see that gaming is all around. We hear about it in the mainstream media, and we want to get there. We think it's cool, but without necessarily a strategy behind it. So it's, maybe video gaming is not for you, not at this moment. So what we're trying to do is really see if gaming is a good fit in your current digital marketing strategy, and if it is, then we'll find the right approach.
I think that's exactly right. It's about making sure that you're focused on what your end goal is. Morgan?
Yeah, I mean, I'd echo that. I think it's depending on whether you're trying to drive a conversion or awareness, right? Like actually having, a pair of Under Armours in game in Fortnite, having somebody wearing the Currys, like that might be great for awareness, and that ultimately will drive to a conversion. Having something a little bit more, as I alluded to, like a scratch off that's going to give you a discount, and or you have to click on the scratch off to get in an email to get to the website to complete it. I'm bringing you that much closer to conversion. So like it goes back specifically to what Quentin said, what's the end game? And then based on that, kind of move backwards and think about, start small. It takes a little bit longer to get statistical significance, but if you blow your whole budget at once and the outcome isn't what you expected, then it's tough to ask for more money, particularly if you want to double down on gaming where you haven't necessarily had learnings with the first round of spend.
100%. There's a second kind of follow-up from Frederick Wolf on this. Any insights on ROI delivered by gamification stats versus traditional Marcom plans? So that's actually kind of leveling up from that foundational question. We were talking about that a little bit earlier. Jim, maybe you have a perspective on how to answer that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think I've created games for conversion in and of itself, right? And money. Where they're a for-profit game, and that's simple enough. And you start to learn your way. When I was at Viacom, we realized that we make far more money off of educational games than the big franchises of SpongeBob and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, because we could create a gamification that wasn't just for the player, the preschooler, but for the parent, because they would see achievements and diplomas and progression. And it all of a sudden became a responsible digital pacifier. So if you're creating that, and really the money behind the games were really nothing more than to drive tune-in or drive movie viewing, right? So, it was sort of revenue generated marketing. Those are much simpler. I think if you're creating gaming as part of a broader plan, I think you have to use the same kind of KPIs that you are judging your other mid-funnel tactics against, right? So if, make it up, and when in 2016, I think it was when Phelps was breaking all of those records, we were forbidden by the IOC to do anything around that, but they didn't stop us from using emojis or gaming. And so I created a swimming game that just happened to launch the same day that this iconic swimmer's, achieving immortality. The amount of play and impressions and time spent during that game versus any other things that we were doing around that moment were so much more dramatic, right? So I think it's using the exact same KPIs around mid-funnel marketing, unless it's in and of itself a revenue generating marketing play.
I think that's totally fair. And you mentioned education in that answer. And Quentin, before everyone else jumped on earlier, we were talking about COVID and how gamification has really come to the forefront more so than ever because of COVID. This is a really interesting question. I'm going to open it to anyone who'd like to answer, but Stephanie asks, have you thought about using gamification and your brand to educate on important issues such as mental health? I think this is an especially important question right now during COVID. So awareness, using this to support your audience as we're all in very challenging times. Has anyone worked through that as an issue internally?
If I may jump on this one, I think like, and it's really, I think for the next years, this is going to become more than a trend. It's going to become really something established. Is that Jim mentioned the storytelling aspect of, it's more than gaming. It's because, we have these narratives that are, are connecting people together. And so it leads to the social aspect of gaming. And you see that games like Roblox, Fortnite, or Minecraft, who are becoming more than just games. They're really becoming social networks. And in a time of COVID, when you can't really see people face to face, they've become a place where you can have fun, where you can meet your friends, where you can connect with them. So definitely in terms of for mental health, I think that's definitely, gaming has been helping a lot of people, conversing and keeping their friendship relationship going.
I love that. Anyone else have anything to add? Otherwise, I'll move on. We've got 9 minutes and 26 questions. There's no way we're going to get to it, but this is a really great question from John, which I think you will all be able to answer, which are examples of basically success stories, case studies. Obviously, Jim, we'll start with you because the curry, I mean, that's just crushing it on every category. So we'll start with you and then we'll go round robin with case studies, please.
Super fast. I'd start off with the Nick Jr. educational games, right? That became a way where we made money off of the promotion of Dora, Bubble Guppies, all of Timu Mizumi, all of these educational programming. And we entrenched in a mother or father's mind that spending time with this wasn't negative anymore, right? And it allowed them to go and do the things that we wanted. We made a bunch of money and promoted the franchises. I think the curry one is the other one, right? It's just the different components, whether it was in real life, whether it was through a partner like Twitch, whether it was through advertising where we created it within ad units, or whether it was actual mobile games that we created, like Lights Out Shooting Game or a reaction time game for players. All of those were different expressions, were launched at different times and continue to really resonate with the core audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Ryan, you want to speak to one of your best case studies?
Probably one that I kind of mentioned already, but when we partnered with Ninja, my God, like he's enormous, and the impact that he has, and be able to present that back to leadership and just be like, we just invested X amount of dollars and the return of investment was huge. I think that was amazing. So obviously that's big budget. And then I think the other one, which is actually something where, going back to a previous question, is like where we gave a reward without giving money, is we unlocked like a secret restaurant within the app. And that was another example that really went off. It got people super excited. They had the opportunity to order from this unique menu with amazing food. So yeah, that was another thing we did.
Love it. Morgan, case study?
I think for us, a lot of what we've had has been, we've developed our Omen team. Our Omen gaming squad has some of the top tier gamers kind of around the world playing in it, representing our brand, playing on HP devices. I'm not wearing an Omen hoodie right now, but I have one close by.
You are all about the in-moment branding. I love it.
We've been able to create, the apparel's really great, actually, even if you're not a gamer.
Yeah.
I would say the other thing, honestly, like, if you're a brand and you're just looking to kind of get something off the ground and start testing, there's platforms like Tapjoy that work on a CPA basis, and people who are already into their game, you can advertise on the offer wall and you only pay on a CPA. So you're only paying if you're actually getting that action to take place. And so I think, there's brands like that have done incredibly well working with the latest and greatest, whatever the hottest game is. And so we've had success with them and with other third parties across a variety of different areas. But I think for these types of conversations, people like to know like who specifically what specifically. And so, sometimes it's the brand and sometimes it's the middleman that helps out in that capacity.
I think that's totally fair. Quentin, I know you've got a million case studies, but one of your best.
That's right. Well, I would say the one that comes to my mind recently is a game that we created for the show What We Do in the Shadows that you may have heard of, or that you may.
So funny. Oh my God, it's amazing.
It is a great show, and so we were approached by an agency working with FX Networks to develop a game for Comic-Con, that turned virtual this year, obviously. And so in 5 weeks, our creative teams really did an amazing job. They created this small game when you embody Guillermo. And what was really fun is that we had the participation of the main actor who plays Guillermo in the show to voice the character in the game. We added a little bit of competition in it with a leaderboard, with social sharing features, and I think the traction on social media was amazing. I mean, it was relayed over the official accounts of the show. Actually, the game was only available for the US, and a lot of people internationally said, "Why? We want it to be available in our
Always
country."
a good sign. Yeah.
Exactly. So that's really a campaign we were proud of.
I love that. So we only have a few minutes left, but we've gotten a lot of questions about kind of the future of gaming. A lot of people are asking questions about AI, VR, AR, all of those things. So I think, Quentin, I'm going to pass it back to you. Share with us your perspective on what the future of gaming is going to look like and how you might integrate some of those technologies.
Sure. So gaming is just like I don't know, the vertical is just, there's just so much happening right now, and it's going to keep on happening in the next few years. But in a nutshell, what I'm thinking of is social gaming. Like I said, it's going to keep on expanding, and we're going to the point that we're going to reach a scale when we could talk when we can name them metaverses. So it's actually I didn't invent the term. It's Tim Sweeney, the CEO of Epic, that actually talked about that. But yeah, there's something to it. Games are going to become these new social networks where you don't only meet your friends and interact with your friends, but also purchase stuff, live in this. So you might remember the Second Life game, some years ago, and that has really matured, obviously. And these kinds of games are really going to become more and more massive. The second thing, cross platforms. Even though you've just had new consoles that have been released, and you also, of course, you have exclusives on this console. Most people don't care about the platform they're playing on. They just want to be with their friends. They just want to be able to play whenever, wherever they want to. So it's not going to be this console war. It's not going to be really relevant anymore. And you're going to have more and more games that are going to be accessible, on PS5, on Xbox, on PC, on mobile, and so that anyone can play them whenever they want. Also, esports. This is something that
No-brainer.
To keep on developing, even though live sports are going to come again, and after COVID, but esports is going to keep on growing. And currently, esports is mostly known on console and PC, but it's also developing on mobile. We're experiencing this growth through one of our games called Asphalt, and so it's definitely going to be more and more stronger and stronger. And streaming is going to grow bigger to the point that streamers are not going to be only streaming for their audience, but are going to be able to interact with their audience. And we know Twitch is currently implementing new features for streamers to actually let their audience, participating in the games with them. And finally,
You're
obviously,
not passionate about this at all, I can tell.
and
So you
finally,
talked about, go ahead, finish.
No, and finally, I just wanted one last point. Obviously, we've talked about gaming and gamification, and I think, again, brands are going to come around this, and it's going to become more and more a natural part of a media mix. When brands are starting to budget things. So,
totally. So you mentioned consoles and PC. So Morgan, what's your perspective on the future of gaming? And Paul and Jazz, I'm going to go over a few minutes so I can make sure I get to everyone to wrap up.
I honestly don't think I could say anything that Quentin didn't already say. I think having kids in the house, I definitely echo what he's saying about cross-platform. I think you asked about AR. I remember when Burger King came out with that AR buck menu thing 10 years ago, and here we are talking about AR again. I remember when the Lawnmower Man came out 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and Stephen King had this guy who was not in the greatest of mental health, and he put on a VR headset, and synapses started firing, and his brain rebuilt itself even better. So I think what's old is new again, honestly. And I think that's something that like we're figuring out how to leverage VR in different ways. We're figuring out how to use AR, whether it's for a scavenger hunt outdoor, and you got to go and scan and get the clue in person with a 3D model. And so I think a lot of what was discussed, AR is coming back again in new and unique ways. VR is upping the stakes considerably, and not just from gaming, but overall versatility when you're thinking about computer-aided design, engineering. Like gaming is opening itself up to a variety of other facets, and it is creating the next round of geniuses that are going to define technology for the next 20 or 30 years.
What a great soundbite. Ryan, any final words on the future of gaming?
Yeah, so
Gamification.
From what the guys just covered, there's just so much opportunity. It's enormous. It's something that's been around for so long, but it's getting to so much more of a sophisticated state. For me, I want to start seeing more brands really invest in it in terms of their own org, in terms of structure and headcount. It's something that as I move into my new role, I want someone dedicated to gamification. Potentially there should be an org dedicated to it as well, because it's enormous. It's going to continue to evolve, and I think the opportunities are incredible. So yeah, I want to start to see structural differences in terms of how it will evolve.
I think that's such an important point. Yeah, it's about the structure within the organization, not just the idea of and executing it within certain pieces within the organization. I love that, Ryan. And Jim, are there any morsels left for you? I don't know. I'm sure you have a really unique perspective on the future of gaming.
I think these guys covered. I'd just say two things. I think it's be interesting because I think the backdrop of where you sit right now, Laurel, I think the hub of the spoke in the entertainment industry is going to be gaming. I think first and foremost, which I think will be interesting. And I'm going to go a little bit differently, counter this. I think there actually may be a moment after this pandemic where people start to say, I want to get back outside. I want to see real people, and I want to do real things for a little bit. I'm not saying that it's going to prevent gaming from moving forward, but I think there's going to be a little bit of a backlash against what we've all experienced, which will drive people just a little bit more back to other things and gamified experiences, human to human.
Interesting. Controversial as a closer. I love it. Well, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I can't believe how quickly an hour went. We apologize for not getting to everyone's questions, but I'm sure that the entire audience is going to come back and see you guys again in the future, because there's going to continue to be these really important conversations around gamification and the future of gaming. So with that, I want to thank my panel. You guys did a phenomenal job. Thank you everyone who was super engaged. We had like 50 or 60 questions. So clearly you guys crushed it today. And with that, I'll pass it back to Paul and Jazz to wrap things up. But thank you so much, guys. You were so engaging and interesting. I love this conversation.
Thank you for the time.
Yeah, thanks so much, guys. Again, just echoing what Laurel just mentioned there about, thanks so much for the engagement, for the questions from you guys. We'll be running these sessions over the course of the next couple of months. So yeah, it'd be great to have you on again. Thanks so much for attending, everyone. And we'll also be sending out the recordings towards the end of this week. So look out for that in your inbox. Thanks a lot, guys. Cheers.
Bye, guys. Thank you. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye-bye.